and today I'm going to spend probably half an hour or something like that talking about some stuff that I've been thinking about first. So I want to be careful because I asked here, I'm thinking about moving to Solid.js because from everything that I've seen, Solid.js seems to be React, but with all the mistakes fixed. So the way that it seems to me is that they use React and they learned all the mistakes and then they fixed all of them and they created Solid.js. So it's pretty much a React, but a better React. But I want to be careful because I don't want this to be taken as like, it's always easy to criticize someone. And I think it's important to separate the people from the tools that they build. And so this is the reason why I'm saying this is because I don't want this to come across as I'm criticizing the team of React, because I do think that they are very smart and like it's just the nature of things. So, for example, just because AlphaZero plays chess a lot better than Magnus Carlsen doesn't mean that Magnus Carlsen is an idiot. So, just want to make that clear because I think that sometimes people can take this the wrong way, and I think people is the whole JavaScript, TypeScript kind of thing where people get identified with the tech that they use, and then they start getting protective. And it makes a lot of sense because it's the gambler's fallacy. Not really sure if that's a good way to put it, but if you invested a bunch of time to something, then you start to become identified with it, and then it starts becoming tribal, which is just part of human nature. So like the decision here that I'm making is not to do with the people, obviously, it's just to do with the systems, and I'm thinking about what is the best long term for what I'm doing. So like the biggest concern that I have with moving to Solid.js is all the libraries in the community, because like obviously I don't want to spend a bunch of time recreating all the solutions that people already built, and there's a chance that if I move to Solid.js, I'm gonna have to spend a bunch of time like just fixing source code or getting the source code for the libraries and then refactoring everything so it works on Solid. But so far, from everything that I've seen, it seems like Solid is a better React. And also the other reason why I'm thinking about this is because I've seen that on Twitter some time ago that a lot of people were saying that React is moving towards the same way that PHP was, which is with the server components thing. And I think that I don't know anything about this, but obviously I'm just deriving from first principles. It seems like that because everything in the universe works in cycles. So like the past is the future. They are simultaneously created through the present. Yeah, that's my belief. And it is a multifractal pattern. So it's impossible to create something that is 100% new. Everything that you create is going to be an invention and discovery at the same time because it's paradoxical. So you can only invent things that already existed to a certain extent because everything you know is a consequence of the past. So there isn't a 100% true invention. It's just a creation from stuff that existed on the past because the future is the past, is a multifractal object. So I think that the time works this way, and it seems like this is the cycle that is happening here, where it started with PHP and seems like React is closing the cycle. And because of that reason, I think that there's there's a high probability that React will decline in the future and the new frameworks will start rising. So I think that we are right at that time, and just based on the first principles. And for that reason, I also think that's better to move to Solid. But the biggest problem is all the work, because I don't want to spend a bunch of time working on this stuff when I could be working on solving the actual thing that I want to solve. So I think what I'm going to do is just, but I think it is worth it trying to move everything to Solid, because from as far as I've seen from the videos and everything, it seems like it's a lot better than React. And is React with all the stuff, all the problems solved? So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to finish here. I have like a very, very challenging thing to do now, which is I have to I'm creating the request here, and I have to receive the request, then use OS walk to find the project or to read all the files and folders from the project, and then I have to structure the folders with this data structure here. So I'm receiving the request from the front end, and I have to use the OS walk based on the project that I sent on the request here to create this data structure and then send as response to the server. So I think I'm gonna try to do this first, and then if I manage to do this, if it doesn't take too long, then I'm gonna try to create another project and then try to move the project that I have to Solid. So create everything from start and just refactor everything so it works on Solid. If I'm able to make that happen, then I think I'm gonna just use Solid instead of React. But if it takes too much work, or if I see that some libraries don't work, I might try to even change the source code from the libraries to, because they are very similar, so it might be worth it to spend time trying to refactor the source code of the libraries to try to use, which is also something that I've already done to a certain extent in the past, because I think it's better to, at least for the core stuff that your website depends on, it's better to have the source code of the library itself and then take the responsibility to change the code. So I tried to recreate Reactor Fiber, but then I was having some problems, and I decided that's just better because of the time invested to continue with Reactor Fiber. And then I've seen that Solid also has a version of Reactor Fiber that is Solid 3. And the only thing that I'm using from the Fiber is the canvas object, which they use a pattern, I think, with, they use stores, the Zustand store, and use Raf, I think. Or no, they use a object to cache instances of the canvas, and that part was like the complicated one to try to reproduce. But yeah, so the biggest ones I have, also there's camera controls as well that I'm using, but I think camera controls attaches themselves directly with 3JS. So because I'm doing everything with the imperative approach, I think I can just use Solid 3 for the canvas, and then everything else is just gonna work because it comes from 3JS. So the biggest ones are Zustand, that I'm depending on, Zustand, the canvas, and React Query that I was gonna use now. So I think even before implementing React Query, it makes more sense to try to move everything to Solid first. So I asked here, I'm building a website that depends on this stuff, the context, how is it different, because I wanna understand obviously better. And then the reply that I got so far now, this one that I haven't seen, but yeah, he's pretty much saying that he doesn't think that Zustand is necessary on Solid, and I think I kind of agree based on the stuff that I've seen, because the way that it works on React is that every time, if you're using context, every time the context gets updated, it updates all the components that rely on that context. So there isn't any nuance. So if you're using context like in 3 different components and one of them changes the value of the context, instead of just updating that component, it updates the 3 of them. But in Solid, and then I think that on React, the context management libraries, the biggest purpose that they have is to fix this thing. And I think that's what Zustand does. So instead of updating the 3 components, it just updates the one that the value changed. And I think Solid.js comes like that as the default. So you don't even need to use the libraries, you just use the context that comes with Solid.js as the default. And I think that's the biggest difference between them, is that Solid.js updates everything reactively. So it just updates the place that the value changes, and React re-renders the whole component. And React has a virtual DOM, and then it compares the virtual DOM with the real DOM based on the diffing algorithm, and uses the Reactor Fiber, no, not Reactor Fiber, the Fiber work loop. So it traverses the tree of the Fiber work loop, and then based on this comparison, it decides whether or not to update the components. And then it has the dependencies with the use effect and all this other stuff that determines whether or not the component is going to be updated. But in Solid.js, as far as I know, it just runs everything once, and then it only updates the places where the value changes, the value actually changes. So instead of using the use effect in React where you have to put the dependencies, in Solid.js it automatically knows what has to update based on the effect that you create. But I don't have a very deeper understanding, so This doesn't resistant stars with solid query without issue. We know just fantastic and so on. Yeah. So I think that's my intuition is telling me that's probably worth it to move, but if it is too much work, then probably just gonna continue because there's a lot of stuff that I have to solve as well. Like on top of all this stuff, I have to figure this out. So like figure everything out. So also created a button here just for now so I can test the thing without re-rendering every time. So I can just click the button and see what's happening. And also added the icons here, and now I can change the component that is showing there, but I haven't created the component yet, the customization component. So what I have to do now, for now I'm using the use effect, just to, I'm gonna follow these steps here that I created. Also, the other thing that I was thinking about is that, like, at first I was thinking about I'm gonna make the request and I'm gonna create the graph and then I'm gonna send the graph as the response. But then I thought about it, like, that's pretty dumb, because it's much better if I have the graphs already, obviously. So it makes a lot more sense to create a database of graphs and then instead of making the API, I just make, which will be a REST API, but it will be more like a database where I can do post requests as well, and then I can add the graphs. So that way I can hook up something later that just creates the graph, like another API or something like that creates the graph and posts into the database. And then the website, the front end is just gonna get the graphs from the database. I think that makes a lot more sense. I'm still gonna have a lot of challenges with the cache, because obviously, like, the nuance is gonna come with the size of the graph, and I think is that the fundamental essence of computation, which is the relationship between space and time, because everything else is on space-time. So the natural progression, I think, is a funnel. So that's probably what's gonna happen, is that there's gonna be a correlation where the size of the graph is gonna is gonna be directly correlated with the structure of the cache. So the bigger the graph, the more nuance I'm gonna have to create in order to navigate the graph space and determine how I'm gonna display the graph space. So it is easier to understand what's going on. But let me think about this. I think I'm gonna stop this one. So the way that it works here is that I can access, based on these query params, the properties that I send here. And now I'm sending ID, but I think I'm gonna send... So I need to send project. Which is gonna be... I think what I'm gonna do is just focus 100% on Python first, because I think that's a lot more intelligent. So solve the niche solution first and really focus on how to optimize everything for Python, and then just forget about the rest. But I'm gonna try to do things in a way that it becomes easier to scale if it comes to the point where I want to scale for other languages. So I think it makes sense to put not a project but language, and then later on I can, if I scale to other languages, I can pass this as a parameter for the other languages as well. It's going to be complicated when there's projects that have multiple different languages, but then what I can do is just make multiple different requests, and then probably going to have to change the logic, but I don't think it's worth thinking about this now. I think I'm just going to do the function based on the Python, or just specific language, which is going to be Python. And then the structure of the directories on the backend is going to be equivalent to the parameters that I pass on the request. Because it's the stuff that I talked about on the previous stream, where there's this relationship between I think the query parameters are the bridge between the structure and the variance of the data. So the structure of the page is an archetypal structure that is a multifractal pattern, and the variance of the data determines what the multifractal pattern has to look like in order to encapsulate the scope of space-time that the variance of the data exists in. And the thing that changes based on that is going to be the structure of the query, I think. So because that's going to be directly related with the structure of the function because of the variables that you want. So the control flow inside of the function is directly correlated with this dynamic of the variance and the structure of the page. So it is a multifractal, infinite variance converging towards a multifractal, which is the funnel of information, I think. So what I have to do here probably is to create another folder called Python. Oh, this is another thing, is that because I'm going to do the database, I think it's better to separate, because I'm going to do different functions to get the graph and to get the project structure. But I think for here, it's better to do like this as well. So here, I'm going to get the language from the... So let me think. So one of them is going to be language. The other one is going to be project, probably. And then I make the OS walk based on these parameters here. And I think I have to put all of this stuff on a try except block. Let me think about it. No, what I'm thinking about is just putting like a default, but obviously I can't just declare data here on top. So I make data equal to something, but I'm thinking about... I think I have to do it like this. So it has the same... It's better to do it like this, so it has the same data structure. And then I just reassign based on the try except block. Because I'm thinking about the case where someone puts a parameter that doesn't exist, then obviously I want to send a different response, and then I want to load a different component on the front end. Specify that the graph, that I couldn't get the graph on the folder structure. I'm gonna do the folder structure first. And the way that I'm thinking about structuring things as well on the front end, obviously, is gonna be like this page here loads all the... It loads this other page here. So on this one is this one. So here I'm gonna, instead of doing the way that I'm doing here, I'm just gonna do another request, obviously, to the backend, because obviously they have to be synchronized. So the projects that the cards I'm gonna display here have to map to the structure of the projects here, so that they're always the same when I'm calling to this function here. So yeah, I make a request here, then instead of passing like this, I loop over the projects that I have on the backend. Then when they click here, this component determines the link, which is going to determine the query parameters. So it's just a dynamic route, which is another thing that I have to see. Maybe I should ask that on the Discord for Solid as well. What is the version of React DOM to Solid? The other thing I was thinking about is that, like, not that it's better, but it is something very nice from Next.js is because I'm gonna have a problem with loading the file. So I think that Next.js is very good for that, because then I could use a serverless function and just write through a file and then do stuff like that. But I'm gonna have to think about, because I'm thinking about creating another div or something, HTML element that is gonna display whatever the file has, and then it would be ideal if I could change the colors of the display as well. So like the HTML is going to be connected with the state of the graph, so that in that sense it highlights the tags that are equivalent to the graph, because that would be very nice, obviously. But then the problem is, like, I'm going to have to send the file, and this is where the complication starts, because then depending on the size of the file that I'm going to send from the backend to the front end, maybe I will have to separate, because I remember doing stuff like this with Next.js, and if you're going to send files and receive files and stuff like that, you have to create a buffer because of the size of the bytes, and then the buffer is like a space, it's like a window into the data flow, I think that's the good way to imagine. So instead of setting the whole thing, it's like imagine you're trying to send an ocean through a pipe. It's just gonna break the pipe. And that's what you're doing when you're sending information back and forth through the wires. So there's a limit between, it's like the relationship between the flow of the data that exists on the two different sides and how much the pipe can take. And then obviously that's the reason why you create buffers, and that's the reason why you create this funnel of information, I think. So this makes the logic more complex. So I'm gonna have to think about, because this obviously is directly related with the, not directly related with the routing, but is directly related with serverless functions, because serverless functions would be an easy way. But if I can't do, because if I can't build like a serverless function, or yeah, I can't build a server on the front end, so it's either serverless functions, or I have to find a way to directly change the inner HTML, which is not very good because then it opens for security risks. And yeah, it's another concern to think about, because then I have to think about how can they manipulate their requests when they send the server, because I'm going to be using OS to get the files and then send a response, and then there might be attacks, attack vectors, and it's not very good. I think this kind of stuff's probably better to do it later. Just ask on the Discord and then watch more videos. Read the documentation first. You should probably just work. I'm gonna ask ChatGPT and then I'm gonna start working on the thing. I know that this stuff is gonna be hard. Because it's gonna, maybe I will have to do a recursive function and then I'm gonna have to spend some time thinking about how to convert. It's just annoying. I think the first thing I'm gonna do, because I don't like to think, is just to use ChatGPT. Then obviously, if I can't do that, then I'm gonna have to think about it. But I have to receive the request, then use OS walk depending on the parameters, and then convert the data structure that I get from OS walk into the other data structure to send as response. It's not React DOM, it's React DOM router. Let me see the name of the thing itself. Yeah, React router DOM. I think probably I'll have to do stuff manually. So the calculation here that I have to do is just about time. Because I think that objectively, if I could just snap my fingers and change everything, then I think Solid would be better. There's also the problem, I've been thinking about moving from Vercel to somewhere else as well, but I'm not really sure if that's worth it or not. That one I think is more nuanced and blurry than the React to Solid. I think React to Solid is pretty clear that Solid is better. But for Verso, I'm not really sure. Because I think that the main benefit of using Verso is that it is easier, but then it's one of those things where usually the best decision is the one that is hardest in the present moment. So like the concern that I have is the vendor lock-in thing, which I'm not knowledgeable enough to know if Verso is doing that or not. I think that to a certain extent they are, which it makes a lot of sense because all the companies are incentivized to do this. That's why they offer free stuff. Like Google, they like hook you in the beginning and then they generate gravitational force. And then once they have enough gravitational force, they just flip. Because they dominate the market. So I think this is my biggest concern with Versal, is that's like everything is easier now, but then eventually, like once I scale, they just change things or flip. The situation changes, and then because I'm locked in with them, I get fucked. So, but I'm not really sure because there's like this is the question. There's always the trade-off with time because everything's a race. So. So let me think about this stuff now. So language Python ID is going to be the name of the project. I think for now I'm going to do lower. I don't remember if it is lower or not. I'm just going to test here. The thing is, I think it's better to do everything lower and then I just create like the standard for myself of writing the names in lowercase. There's less chances of making a mistake, so. So maybe it's the other way around. I always confuse the two. Maybe it's like, but I think that it is probably not like that. Let me just print the thing first. Oh, it says none. So I'm doing something wrong here. Language. I forgot to change. I probably should put on a try except block as well. A Python pandas. So now let's test. Okay. I think I'm gonna worry about sending, because I'm gonna send you a different response, or I mean, like the best thing I think is just to put a different value of the data here for both of them, and there's, but maybe not. Yeah, I have to see like what the different types of response are gonna be. So maybe when there's the exception, I just send another response here, and then I just send one response as the default. So, yeah. But it's probably better to just initialize the data here and then I reassign the value here. Yeah, but then that's not very good, I think. Yeah, but yeah. Because if it fails, it's always going to be on the exception, so. I think I'm going to think about this later. So what I'm going to do is just use... I have to see... So I'm gonna do this here. And here I'm gonna initialize the data structure that I'm gonna do send. And now the challenge is using OS walk from the top here of this project to convert all files. This is something that I have to think about as well. It's like, I think I'm just gonna send the Python files and not send the rest. Because it doesn't matter that much to understand the code. And the way that I'm thinking about this is that it doesn't need to be perfect. The core of the thing is just being able to... I want to try to approximate as much as possible what would feel like to have the creator of the library explaining everything for you, instead of trying to learn, like, go over the source code and try to understand everything yourself. So just the graphs to allow people to understand at a much faster rate what's going on. So I think that for that, probably just sending the Python files is enough. But later on, I'm going to have to think, obviously, about the logic for different types of extensions of the files, and then based on that, select different icons. So the other thing that I have to think about is I have to think, like, this is the issue, is that when they send another... Like, the problem is that when they click on the file, I have a problem with the cache and the way that I'm gonna do the requests. So I think a good thing, like, probably the best way to do it is gonna be when they click the file, the first time that they get into the page, I send all the information, and then I cache the information on the front end. So that when they click the file, it doesn't do the same request again to get everything. But I do need to make another request when the second time that they select a file, because I need to access the specific file that they're accessing. And the only way to do that, I think, is through the request. So, like, this is what I'm thinking about. Do I have to do it on another function where I'm just getting the file path? Like, how is that gonna work? Because if I only do the request one time and then I cache, then there's no way to know which file they are at. Because I'm not gonna make future responses, future requests. So I need to figure out a way, which is probably gonna be, and this is the problem, it's gonna depend on React Query. But maybe I just worry about this one now, and then I think about this later. So the way that I'm imagining in my mind is that when they click the page, I have a logic on the front end to see if they're clicking the page on for the first time, making the request for the first time. So if the cache doesn't exist, then I just make the one request to one of the functions, which is going to be this function. So this is the function that is called the first time that they get into the page, which sends all the information. And then there's another condition where if it's not the first case, then it means that they're clicking on a file or a folder. If they're clicking on a folder, then there isn't any reason to send the request as well. So it should be only when they're clicking on the file. And then based on that, I just send the file path. But I have to see, like... So maybe I think I'm gonna try to do the function first, and then I'll think about... I don't understand why this is not highlighted here as well. So I think about this function, then after I think about this function, I'm gonna do the link. So I'm gonna convert the files to be a link inside and see what happens when the yeah. I don't know why this is not being highlighted. This I'm using here, so I'm probably hitting the exception here. Oh, it's probably because of this thing here. Yeah, now it's... I'm trying to think, because maybe I don't even need to do this. I could just do OS walk directly on the path. Oh, maybe it doesn't exist. I don't know why I did OS path. Yeah. I think I'm doing the wrong function. I can also just use string formatting here, but hmm. I don't understand why it's not going there. It's weird because it should be printing the error, I think. If it's not working. Or maybe I just didn't save the thing. No. Yeah, it is going here. Hmm. Maybe I can't use this here. What's going on? I don't think that's the problem, but it's worth trying. Because it is generating the thing here. So it's the generator. I don't understand why it's not printing there. Maybe it's because the path is saying that the path doesn't exist. If that was the case, I wouldn't be able to create, I think. Oh, it's the path. I can't projects. Oh, it's because I forgot the API. But let me think about it. And it's because the path is from the top level, probably because it's being run by the manage.py file. Oh, there we go. Maybe I think it's easier if I. The problem with using this CLS is that it doesn't clean the stuff. Just it makes it seem like it clings, but it doesn't. I've seen some stuff that's on, I think, Primogen stream. He talked about labels, I think, and I didn't know that. I'm not really sure if it was on Python or JavaScript, or maybe there is a thing like that on Python as well. That was saying that in order to avoid doing this, when you have a nested for loop, in order to avoid doing this condition here, you can use a label, and then based on the label you break. I don't remember really well how it works, but I think that it is the same pattern from assembly. It allows you to put labels on things and then you just jump to the label. But I don't think it's that big of a deal to do this. And I'm probably gonna study that more later. Yeah, so now the challenge is how do I make it so that I traverse using OS walk and convert to this structure here. So whenever it's a folder, you need to put the children. So I'm gonna do like pseudo code, I think. A folder, children, on this. Both of them have type. Both of them have name and type. The fuck? And there, it's a file. There is no children. So that's the biggest difference between them, just the children. And children is a list. So what comes to mind is just a recursion with loops, but I'm gonna try to see if I can think about the easiest way possible to convert. So I'm receiving the directory here, the subdirectories. This might be very hard because I remember I was trying to do a visualization of the tree structure, and it was very annoying because of the way that OS walk traverses the thing. I think it traverses like kind of like almost in a linear way. It goes down on the files, then it goes to the same level, and then once it goes to the next folder, it doesn't capture the information of the folder or something like that. It just goes like straight to the subdirectories. So it was kind of hard, and I think that the way that I tried to solve that was based on the directory or the root, just by splitting the name and getting the levels, but it was very difficult. So let me think. Also need to create a condition that just gets the files based on the extension. So let me think. So the beginning. Actually, it's probably better to put this instead of here, and then I just put the name there. And the first one is just going to be the name of the project, and I did it like this so it is easier on the front end. Because I didn't want to change this stuff. So this one is just the top of the project. It doesn't have a name either, so. Yeah, so it's obviously gonna have the children. So what I'm gonna have to do is create an object first and then append. And the object is gonna be it's gonna be recursive. I think I should put this on another function here and just call the function. Oh, so in the first one, it does capture the pandas thing. Even though here, I'm passing the name as well. Oh no, it's because it has another thing here. Oh, that makes sense. The annoying thing is gonna be the challenge is that I have to think about like what is the essence of the pattern that I have to capture, and then do the logic this way. One of the biggest things that I'm thinking about as well is just creating something on the website that I want to create something that allows me to train recursion more, because I think that recursion is very difficult. And like the main difference between recursion, because they're both loops, like recursion and loops. The main difference is that on the recursion, I think that it isn't natural because you go back and forth. So I think the main thing that separates them is just that on recursion is more abstract because you need to understand the levels of the backtracking that it does based on the stack frame. So becoming good at recursion, I think, is harder because you have to be able to visualize how the backtracking is gonna work based on the base cases. So, but I haven't figured out a way to like structure my thinking so that it is easier to create the logic for the function. But there needs like there has to be something there that's allows you to just think about like the fundamental thing, and then based on that, it makes it a lot easier to think about how to structure recursive functions. The way that I think about it for now is just that when you need to traverse diagonally to something, then you have to use loops and the recursion. If you're only going from the top to the bottom, is just recursion. And then when you want to go from left to right, is better for having a loop. So most of the challenging things with recursion, like the most difficult algorithms that involve recursion, is going to be traversing diagonally towards something. Just going to be the combination of recursion and loops. But I still like I have challenge thinking about like the best way to structure things, even though. But I can't quite put into words what is difficult. Like I feel like I'm almost there, like being able to clarify, but it's not quite there. That like I think it's because you have to capture something fundamental about the whole thing instead of being able to think about it in steps. Like when you do a loop, it's easier because you can think about the control flow from, and probably that's the reason, because it goes more naturally with the way human beings think. Probably it's just like you can go from left to right, and then as you're traversing the thing linearly, you can think about the logic for the control flow of the way that things are going to change. But with recursion, it seems like you have to think about the whole solution first, because you have to capture the essence of the thing, and then you have to, from this, like after you are able to capture everything, then you can create the pattern and then think about the nuances from that. It's a lot harder to think about it. So I think that I shouldn't use the root probably. So for each folder, I'm going to create an object. The object is going to contain the name and the type. So the type is going to be folder, obviously. And type folder. The name is going to be a current folder. And then it's going to have children. And this is the challenge. That's the problem, because on the next iteration I'm not gonna have access to this. I think this is the key issue here. So the challenge is gonna be, how do I know that I have the... Because on the next iteration I'm gonna have to append the children. I think this is the biggest problem with OS walk that I had on the past. Is that based on the way... I think that the way OS walk works is that it first goes into DAF, into this one, so it's gonna go from here, it's gonna go from this, then it's gonna get the directories, subdirectories and files, then it's gonna go into here, subdirectories and files, then it's gonna go into here, subdirectories and files. But then from this point, it's not gonna go all the way up again, it's just gonna go here, but it's not gonna capture the libs. So it just goes from these files to these files here directly. And then because of that, it becomes hard, because I don't have access to this name here. So I have to think about a way where I can keep track of the thing, and the way to do it is I think is with the root name, but then it gets very annoying because you have to think about how to split this stuff and keep track. It's very difficult. So I have to see if I can think about an easier way. It's just gonna be folder. So obviously here is gonna create the... Okay, I can append there. Older data, children, appends. Yeah, but this is the problem as well. It's because it's not gonna be... I don't wanna always append to the top folder. That's the problem. I think that's where the recursion has to come in. Oh, this is gonna be very hard. I think I should just try to use ChatGPT first. See if it can come up with something. So the way that I'm thinking the solution is probably gonna be is that I have to do a recursion here. So I loop over the folders, and then based on the folders I do a recursion. But then it doesn't work because of the OS walk. So maybe I have to create another function inside of the OS walk, and then... or outside, and then call the function recursively. I'm not really sure of that. Or I can just do... yeah, but then how I'm gonna capture the levels? I can do an intermediate step to structure the data in another way than OS walk does, and then use that data to convert to the other one. And the question is, how do I capture the levels of the thing? And then I remember that it's gonna be a pain in the ass if I wanna do that. And one way I was thinking about is just I separate, like I create a data structure called folders and another one called files, and then it's just dictionaries containing the level of the thing and what the thing is. Then from that thing I create the other one, but it's probably not the best. So one thing that I can do is just do... a condition here to check if it's the first one or not. If it is the first one, I append to this. If it is not, I append to the previous one, or to the current. No, but the current is gonna be the subdirectory, not the directory itself. Question is, where did... I should be using recursion, probably. Like this has to be something else. I think probably what I should do is create another function, and then I just, instead of this, I put the name, and then I call the function here. And the problem is that, like, I need to, yeah, but it's like because of the thing that I talked about, that I think I can do it this way, because I need to know in the previous iteration what the subfolders were, so on the next one I can add the stuff as children of the parent one. So obviously, like, instead of, because if I put it like this, then I'm always gonna append to the same children of the parent thing. So after each iteration, I need to, instead of appending to this, I need to append on the previous iteration, the folders of the previous iteration. But then, not only that, I need to figure out which one it is, like, related to. Which is gonna, but then, like, if I go this route, then is the problem that I talked about, where it's just gonna navigate through here, and then it's not gonna capture the information from this one. So I think that I'm gonna try to ask ChatGPT. If it doesn't work, then I continue to think about it. But not really sure if I'm gonna be able to solve this now. I have to, like, think a lot, because... So how can I ask ChatGPT? Go, bro, back. Let's just try this. See if it works. If it works, it's gonna save me a lot of time. Contemplating whether or not to filter the files based on Python formats. I think I'm gonna do that. I'm not really sure if this works or not, because obviously hard to see here, but what I'm gonna do is just use this data instead of the one that I'm using there now and see if it works. I don't understand why it says recursion if it's not using recursion. Also, it just updates here based on, hey Mustafa, don't know what Salam is, but I have to see, I don't know what this function does. So it gets the relative path based on the root here. The root's gonna change based on the iterations of the OS walk. So it's using this, the root path you pass, which is the, it's always gonna be the same one, and then this one's gonna change depending on the way the OS walk is traversing the thing. So it gets the relative path. Based on the relative path, is just looping. I don't know what this one does as well. But then it's just appending to the current folder, which is this one, and gets updated. Oh, does it update or no? Yeah, that's the thing. I think that this probably is not correct. Oh, it's updating here. I think that this is probably not correct. Was I missing something? I think it's just... this should be... it's correct, because if the extension is pi, then I can... So this is just getting the file names from the beginning, so maybe it's getting here. But that wouldn't make any sense. Maybe it's missing the recursion here somewhere. So I think that this works for the beginning, probably. But then it just gets the folders and doesn't get the file names. I think it's just getting the file names from the roots of the thing. And it's probably supposed to call this again, maybe. But it wouldn't make sense, because then you would call a swap several different times. So I think this is not correct. What I'm gonna do is just send... So first, I'm not gonna put this stuff. I'm just gonna... And then I'm just gonna try to send this as the response and try to load it on the front end. This is another thing that I have to think about. But if I send as JSON, then I can just... I'm just gonna look it up how to convert, but I know that I can. Is there then and then response JSON and then I use another then or something like that. So the other thing that I'm not really sure about is that from what I've seen, people just set the state based on the data that they receive here. So instead of doing the way that I'm doing here, just use the use state here. Just gonna put it like this for now, so it doesn't... Yeah. So this is what I thought. It's like there's something. I could tell that there's something off, but I wasn't really sure because it doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't. So what it's doing is just getting the files in the beginning. Should probably put the key somewhere. The problem is that it has to be unique. So if there's folders with the same name, it's gonna fuck it up. How do I put? Hmm. The problem is. As far as I understand, React uses the key to help with the diffing of the DOM. So it compares the virtual DOM with the real DOM and then uses the key to help that. I don't remember exactly the nuance of that, but and that's the reason why they need to have unique keys, but then it's annoying here because it's recursion, so I'm gonna have to. If it doesn't work, like there can be a case where they have the same name, so if I just put the name here, maybe it doesn't work. So that's the case I have to think about how to pass. Like maybe I do it through the mapping here. But then again there's an edge case where they're gonna have the same index and the same name. If I just pass the ID here as well. So I can put the ID here or the index and then just puts the name and the index here. And then just use that as a key to put here. But I don't think that's very good. So I have to think about a unique way to put the key for everyone. Which is kind of annoying. Yeah. It comes from the data structure. So maybe what I have to do is just put an ID for each one, each folder. Hmm. Let me see if I SID here as well. Hmm. I'm not really sure if it's returning only one because it doesn't on the problem is like if they are on the same thing. But maybe I can put a folder and ID. I'm not sure if it's gonna work. And it's still one because it's not adding to the. It's only adding on the first time, I think. Hmm. Oh. But I don't think I can do this here. I'm gonna try this, but I think it's not gonna work. So if it doesn't work, I just set it up here. Also, it does work. Maybe it's this one, but you have to put on the icons as well. And the problem is that I don't know which one it is. That's the issue. It's saying is on a div. So my mind it should be working now. So maybe it's the edge case that I was thinking about, where they're gonna be on the same level, even though they have different names. But the same name and the same level, so. But here I should be increasing by 1 regardless of the index of this. That's what it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because they should have different things here. So what's going on? Maybe it is the icons, but the icons, you would be complaining about SVG, not the div. So I think it has to be this thing here. But in my mind, it should be unique now. Or just SVGs. Maybe we should put here, because why not? Or it can be on the file as well. Maybe it's on the file. Alright. So the first one is undefined. Because I'm not passing a name with the data, so let me think. If I just put ID, I think it's not gonna work. It doesn't matter that much to me, obviously, but okay, it doesn't change anything from the... Obviously, it changes from the perspective of React, but from what I'm doing, it doesn't. So maybe it's the folder itself, like here. There we go. I think no. Nice. This is something that is kind of weird to me because, like, because this is a component, it makes me think that this should be passing as a prop instead of adding here. And I think sometimes it does that, sometimes it doesn't. I don't understand really well why. Maybe just the key property that is different, so... Yeah, but just gonna leave it like this, whatever. So now I have to go back again and think about this stuff here. So clearly ChatGPT response is not very good. So I think what I'm gonna try to do is just break down this thing here to understand what it does, like what each thing does here. I have to spend some time thinking about how to break down this, how to break this down. So I think maybe the best way to do it is to break down the thing into different steps. So like first I need to I think the way that I was thinking previously is probably the easiest way to go about it. Or just first I break down the folders and files based on the levels, then I create a different data structure, and then from that data structure I create the other one. It's probably not the best, but it's the easiest one to do it and to understand. The best is probably to do recursion with loops. So I guess I have to... So maybe I'll clarify OS walk first. So I want to understand what's... Because I think this is the trickiest part of this, if I figure out how to do that. Like, maybe I should ask ChatGPT how to capture the levels instead. So, yeah, that's probably the best way. And maybe after I figure out the easy solution, I figure out the brute force solution first. Maybe it's not really the brute force, like it's a little bit better, but it's not the optimal one. Then once I figure that out, then I can think about that one and try to convert it into recursion. So I think that probably the one that it is the best is just to mimic the recursion that OS walk does under the hood to create the other structure. It's probably... But it's hard to think about how to do that. Because the other one is built with recursion as well, I think. So it is an object that is going to contain lists of objects. So each level of the list should be a loop. So I should mimic the function on the front end, maybe. So let me think about this. Like, yeah, I should create the same structure from this one. So I think this is a good idea. Because obviously they're gonna be the same thing. So if it's the roots, I do something. If it is the... If it's the roots, I do this. So maybe I shouldn't create in the beginning. The thing I should just try to mimic, probably. And the issue is that this one is based off the other data structure. And OSWalk is gonna traverse differently, I think. But it's probably similar, so... So if it is a folder, then it does a loop and then calls recursively. So if it is roots, I do something here. I leave subfolder, a loop for children, component function. Then what do I pass? I pass the object, the child. It's just an object. So this one has to receive the object, which is going to be the root. And then if it is a file, I do something else. Append to the current level. So maybe I should accept root and which is gonna be a boolean. No, it has to be files, not file. Let me think about this. And maybe it's not the best to use OS walk. Maybe I should just use OS list dir, this directory, and then I just call the function recursively. I think that's better, because if I use OS walk, then it doesn't make a lot of sense. Because, yeah. So it's better to have control over the logic of the way that it's going to traverse the thing. That makes more sense. So then I can create the recursion myself. So the main loop, the outer loop, I just call OS list directory, and then I just call this function recursively, and then based on the function it creates the data. Because then I'm just gonna be recreating the thing. Yeah, but let me think about it. So the beginning is gonna be true. This is only gonna run on the first condition. So I think this is a good way to think about it. So the first thing I have to think about what kind of things. So the type is gonna be folder. But then how do I pass? I need to think about in the beginning. How do I add this stuff to the object? So maybe instead of passing the boolean here to indicate whether or not is the root, I just pass the object itself. But that doesn't make sense. So maybe if I put if roots dot root, because that would be this is this stuff here. So I pass the object, and if it is true, then it's the first one, and then the type. Maybe I just pass. Yeah, I don't need to. Yeah, so here I'm gonna call the thing recursively. So here, if it is a, I should put if. So it is gonna be on children. So I should always loop over the children. And then the child is gonna be the object here. So if the child.name, but this is the problem is that I'm not creating the data structure. I have to think about what I'm getting and then what I wanna create there. So I'm receiving the folder when I create this stuff. Yeah, so it has to be based on the subfolder. So if it is a subfolder, then I create. I'm gonna create the object either way. So maybe I should create the object here. No, I think that doesn't make sense, because it's more clear if I just. I should put a condition to check to see if subfolder exists. So let me remember what I'm getting. I'm getting this stuff here. So the dirs is gonna be the directories. So I should put the same way that it is there. The root is gonna be the object, not the thing. So here's gonna be dirs, and then files. So the directories are the thing. So So if it is a current directory, then it means that... So how should I name this? So I'm gonna create an object that if it is the directory is gonna be object, and then I call recursively, and then I just pass this stuff. Yeah, I think that should probably work. So I just do one OS list directory on the top one, and then I call this function recursively, and based on the branchings, it just goes. So the file is the base case, and then it just appends. So you finish the thing, and if it hits the other breakpoints, it just calls recursively. And that's probably gonna work. But I have to think about... And so I need the type and name for each one. The name is gonna be... So what can I... Current objects... This folder... Name is current here. Children's... Yeah, so here it doesn't make sense to have this because it's gonna be a folder. Then root objects dot children and current objects. And this is the question though, because if I do like this, then it creates a infinite loop. Let me think about this. Maybe we should call OS list here again, because I want to go one level deeper. Yeah, so and then I call. This is a problem, I think. Or I should get the... I should create this data structure myself and then pass through the function. So I create the files. So I use OS list there to... So first I have to clarify what this returns. I think I already got the structure in my mind, but it's just annoying with the details. But hopefully this is gonna work. So instead of using OS walk, which is just more complicated, I'm just gonna use OS list there on the beginning, and then I pass the root object. I create the root object outside, pass to the root object, and then I just pass the beginning information of the OS list there. It's gonna be the subdirectories and the files, and then inside of the function I have branches. The base case is the file case, and which is gonna stop the recursion. The other ones is the root, which is just runs in the beginning to create the first list of children, and then the other one is the subdirectory, which traverses recursively. And for each one it loops. I think that works probably. We're just gonna erase the function ChatGPT gave. This list directory function in Python is lists all the files and directories in the specified directory, returns a list of file names and directory names present in the specified directory. Provide the path of the directory you want to list. So in the beginning function, I'm gonna set up the main function here. Oh, actually, I have to create another thing here. So I loop in the beginning, and I have to separate the files and the folders. I have to see if I can split. Just gonna write and then I'll think about it later, the details later. Just wanna clarify the overall thing. Yeah, so I'm passing the object first, then the folders and the files. So this is the... So if it has a root, it's files, the other ones. If it has, then it loops over the directories. And it creates the object, which is related to the thing. Appends to the children of the current object. And then how do I want to call this recursively? Because the files are not going to be the same. So maybe I separate this thing to another function of looping over the OS directory and getting the files and folders. So I'm thinking about separating this logic into a function and then I just call this function there because I need to... the next ones are going to be the files and the directories on the next level. So I need to do the same pattern that I did in the beginning, but inside of there. So I think about separating this into a function and just returning. And then I call the function inside here, then I get the directories and files for the next one, and I just pass the root object as this one. And I think this is gonna work, because then it's not gonna be root, then I just do the same thing here again. Let me think about this. I have to check to see if the root object has children instead of directories here. And then obviously I'm worried about the nuances later. of if it's gonna work or not on Python to, like, what is the best way to check if it is an empty object or not, or empty list. But I think in Python you can just put like this, and if it is an empty list, it's gonna be false, but maybe not, but it doesn't matter that much. Because obviously I'm gonna correct if it doesn't work. So I check to see if there is children on the current one, which means that it is a folder. And if it is, then I loop over the... If it is a folder, what do I do? Now let me think about this. And this doesn't work because I'm passing the new one that I created, so it doesn't make sense. Yeah, so I have to see if the key exists, not if it is an empty list. So I have to see if the current object, the root object, has children as key. Yeah, if it does, then it is a folder. I don't remember how to do that in Python. Maybe it's length. No, let me think. I can just ask ChatGPT. Or I can use gats and then... Then what do I do? Is a folder. Then I append all the directories and files to the current one. I have to create an object of the files and folders and append to the object, I think. Maybe it's easier to just check based on the type. Honestly. So if it is a folder, yeah, I have access to the... So the dirs and the files is the current directories and files of the current folder. So the current root object. So it's one level below. And so it should be, I should just loop over and then create the objects based on this. And then call recursively, I think. And maybe before I do this, I should clarify this thing. Because I think that this is the confusing part for me now. Like, what should I pass when I pass recursively? I should pass the stuff that is below, so I think that I use OS list there for this. And so if it is a file I don't need to use, so So here I use the function again to pass. Again, I just pass the current there. So, and maybe these two cases are the same. Let me think about if there's a difference between the first one. I think it's probably the same thing. It's just that in the beginning I passed the root. I don't think I need this case here. Should just use this one and then the file. That's gonna work. I'm gonna try like that, and then if it doesn't work, then I think about it later. So if this is a folder, I get the files and folders. Then I call the function recursively, passing the next level of files and folders, and create the object, and append it as children. Here should append the files as well. So append the files first. Loop over the files, append the files. And the annoying thing about this is that the order matters here because of the way that I'm gonna build there. So I think I have to append the folders first. But then if I do that, it's kind of annoying because I'm gonna have to do it like twice. So I'm gonna have to loop over the subfolders. Maybe as I create the list of files and folders for the next, but that doesn't make sense. Actually, it does. Like yeah, as a loop over the subfolders, yeah, but then I have to call again. It doesn't matter. So I'm gonna have to loop twice, I think, but it's not that big of a deal. Which is kind of annoying. Maybe there's a better way. Because I need to loop over the subfolders, create the objects, and then append to the thing. Then after that, I loop over the files and append to the children. And then after that, I have to call recursively, so I have to loop again over the objects. Over the subfolders. As of here. No, this is the problem because I have to loop here. And then I have to loop over the directories again here. Or maybe I'll build, I think that's probably the best way. I build here. And then I just call the function there. No, but it doesn't matter because I need to... I need to call the function inside of the loop. Because obviously it's gonna be for all the folders, so... Yeah, the way that I'm thinking about it is I loop over the things here, then I need to create an object, and then I append the object to for each one to here. And then I have to loop again to call recursively. So here will be like this. Yeah, I think this is correct. Then I loop over the files, append the files, and then I loop over again. But I'm trying to think about, I try to think if there's an easy way, obviously, either way. A way that I can loop over once, and then... The only reason why I have to do this, or maybe I just loop... Yeah, because the problem if I use a sort algorithm later, if I loop once and then if I append the files once and then I loop over, it's not gonna be... Either way, I need to do a separate loop because it doesn't make sense to call the recursion before I add all the subdirectories to the current one. But I think it's not that big of a deal because it's not gonna scale exponentially. Like, obviously increases the time, but the amount of folders is not gonna be that big of a deal, I think. It's not gonna be a case that there's millions of folders, subfolders, stuff like that, so. I think it's fine if I loop. I'm gonna focus on doing this, then I think about this later. Get the brute force solution first. Hey, fellow traveler, what's the other way? Here I have to do another loop here again. Let me think about this. Because for each current directory I need... here I'm not gonna do this, obviously. I'm just gonna... I need to create another algorithm. Another function. Then I pass... And I do this instead of this thing here. And then here I would loop over the... Or just pass the current directory. Yeah, I think this way... Then the only thing that I can change is just the way that I'm doing this. But hopefully this way is gonna work for the overall thing. No worries. So if it is a folder, it loops over the directories. This is going to be subdirectories and then files at the current level. So if it is files, no, if it is a folder, then that means that we can go deeper, and then I can loop over the current directories, which will be the subdirectories, and I pass as children of the current one. So I create an object and then append to the current root object children. Yeah, then, so the first one that I receive is gonna be this one. Then I do the same thing for files, just append the object. I have to create the file object. And then I loop again over the subdirectories. And then I get the sub files and folders using OS list there for the current one, and I call the thing recursively. And then I think this way is gonna work. The only thing that I can improve is just figuring out a way to do this on a single loop instead of doing two here. So now let me focus on creating this function. You just wanna copy the thing. So if I'm checking to see, I think I shouldn't check here. Let me think about this. Actually, I should check twice because it's a different place. So I was gonna say that I don't need to check. No, I'm checking if it is a file or not. But maybe I should check whether it's a Python file or not. And the problem is that if I want to change later, it's gonna be annoying. If I want to accept all kinds of file later, but I think I have to do this either way. Because I'm checking to see if it is a Python file here, but obviously I need to check there as well because I'm just gonna pass, or maybe not. Maybe I just pass the Python files right away and then I don't need to. But I do need to check here anyway. So yeah, I think it doesn't make sense. I just check here because I have to check here for the first time. So it doesn't matter if I pass all the files or, but maybe it's like slightly more efficient to check here again. Because then on the next iteration, there's only gonna be, or maybe I should check here because then I don't need to check here. Because then on the first time, I'm only gonna have Python files as well. Because I'm gonna be using the same function on the first one, so I think I'm gonna check here. And then I can look this. And then I have to remember how to destructure if in Python I have to put the arrays or not. I'm gonna try this way first, then I think about, I'm gonna see if it works, and then I think about how to optimize if it works. So Hey, good night. So let me just review. So I'm looping over the directory. Then I split to see if there's an extension and if it is Python. Let's current split it. If it is, I append to the files, and if it isn't, I append to the folders, and then I return both folders and files. Then I call this function, passing the folders and files and the root object, which is this thing here. And inside of this function, I check to see if it is a folder. If it is, I loop over the directories, create an object, and append to the current children. Then create the object of the files, append to the current file. Then I loop over the directories, charge the subfolders of the current level, call the function to get the folders and files, and then call the function again. And if it is a file, if the type of the object is a file, let me think, because I think this is wrong, because I think this part is wrong. So if the type is a file, what does that mean? It means that I reached the end, so maybe it should just return. Because I'm already adding the stuff here. I'm already adding the files to the children here. So I think I should just return if it is a file. Yeah. Oh, it's because I don't have the thing here. List index out of range. So maybe I do have to do like this. I know that on Python and JavaScript is different, but I don't remember which one is which. So maybe, so it has to be here. Oh, it's probably because of this. So let me see. It's because if it is a folder, it doesn't have the one. Like one thing that I can do, I think is just do this. But I think it's gonna fail as well. Yeah. So it's obviously not working. It's printing folders there. Oh, it's not. Maybe it's not working. Yeah, I just commented it out, but I think it's the other way. So maybe it should be on the same order. But I think it's going the other way. Oh, this is another annoying thing, is that... So I should use -1 instead of using 1. If the file name has dots, then it fucks it up. Maybe I can use length, but then length. No, I think length is a good one. It's probably the easiest one. Yeah, I think now it should be working. On the folders, not working. Hmm. Oh, it has to be greater than or different than 0. No. Because if it is... Yeah, now it's supposed to be working. Let's see if it works. Oh, that's the problem. Hmm. Yeah, so here, how do I make it so that I need to figure out a way to always have the path, regardless of which level it is, to pass the correct path. I'll be right back. But I think this way is gonna work probably. If I figure out how to get the right path, then I think it's gonna work. So I'll be right back. I think I thought about a way. Just gonna pass the current name. Our current directory here. So in the beginning I just pass the one that I have there with its directory. And then here I just add the actually, yeah, it has to be like this. Let me think about it. That makes sense. So the deers, the list of names, and then I'm just adding the next one. So I think that probably works. Now let's test. And there's license. It's because this doesn't have an extension, but it's not a folder. That should be the path, not the name. That's the problem. So obviously I either change the function, so I'm passing the path, not the name, but that's kind of annoying. Or I think about another way to test if this is a file or a folder. Just the easiest way. The question is there a way to test without having to pass the thing? This is kind of annoying if I have to pass the directory here. Let me think about this. Alright, maybe it's just... I just realized that I have the thing now. But I don't like this that much, to be honest. It would be better if I could find a way to check to see if it is a folder or not. I'm not really sure if I like the idea of testing as well, like putting on a try except block. So I just separate superficially here, and then on the next one, like once it gets time to read the subfolder, I just try accept, and then if it is in a folder, I just don't append, I just continue. Maybe that's the best way. This one, like it doesn't feel that is very good. Hmm. I'm gonna try the other way. You know, after that, I just want to see if it works. If it works, I think about more of what things I can do. So I can put this on a try except. I put like here. Yeah, but this is the problem. Then I have to see. Like here. Let me think. Obviously, the first one is going to be a folder always because it's the project. But then, so the only problem is going to be when I call here. So I'm going to pass the path here. Maybe I can put it inside of this thing here instead of putting it inside of the function. So maybe, yeah, but the issue is that like it's gonna put the file as a folder. Maybe we can try here. But I have to try on both of them, I think. And because I'm not adding files that are not Python, I think I can just skip. Maybe create another function, check to see if it's directory. Let me think about it. I think I have to do here and here. So I wonder why it's not returning anything. Hmm. It's probably because of the triggering this exception as well. Yeah, it's just returning none. Oh, it's because I'm not returning anything. That's why. So, yeah. There we go. But this is the problem. It's fucking up the other ones as well. Hmm. This is the stuff that I was talking about before, where there are cases where the like is the same level, but it's probably because I'm creating the algorithm in the wrong way. Yeah, obviously. So it shouldn't be putting this here as well. So I assume that the check is not working. But also the way that I'm building this is incorrect. I don't understand though. This is why. Like it makes sense to me here. I think it should be working. So what am I missing here? 'Cause I'm appending the thing. It has to be on the recursion, but maybe it's because of the way that I'm returning here. But I think it's probably not the case. Obviously this should be incorrect because you shouldn't be putting there as a shouldn't be appending to the children the license one. This is obviously not a folder. So it means that this is passing when it shouldn't be. But I also think that the recursion is wrong, and I'm not really sure why. It should be passing the folders and files. Or maybe it's because of this. Hmm. Yeah, that's the problem. So here I should be looping over. I think I should be looping over the children. And then here I should be checking. Trying to think whether or not I should, because like the files are gonna be always appended here. So maybe I think I don't need to append here. So I add the objects to the thing first. Then here I check to see if the type it is a folder. Oh yeah, forgot about this. And if it is a file, then it doesn't matter. I think. I'm not really sure if it is gonna be any different. I'm just doing the same thing. The dir should be the name, I think. I guess it's the object. Yeah, it should pass the. This is the difference. I should pass the current child, not the. Yeah. Let's see if this works. I'm still fucked. Yeah, but now it works here. So maybe, yeah, but it. So now, let me see. All I have to do is check. And the only difference I think is the order. But I think this is probably correct. I should spend some time thinking about how can I test this. But I think it is correct. And then I have to think about the edge case when there's files with the same name and same level. But maybe that shouldn't happen, I think. Yeah, I think I'm not gonna... the way that it is, it makes sense. And if I get the error of the keys, it means that there was something wrong with the way that I build the stuff here. Because there should never be the case where there's two files with the same name in the same directory, because it wouldn't be allowed, I think. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't... You can't do that, so... Oh fuck. Oh no, but it's a bunch of files. Maybe I should allow these files as well. But I think the algorithm is correct. The only thing I have to change in the future is just the check to see. I can put more conditions there on the other function to check for different types of files, depending on what I want to do here. But I think it is correct. Pandas. No, it is pandas. Anytime. Also, here is a problem again. So there's something happening when they're not Python files. Oh, it's because I'm adding the files regardless. That's why. I'm not putting the check here. I'm just appending them. So I should check to see. I think this is gonna solve this thing here. Then I have to think about why this is happening as well. Like why it's creating the folder. It's probably because but I should be checking here. So I shouldn't be adding the folder as well. Maybe it's because I wasn't checking for the files. Yeah. So the next time, because I was adding and passing, the next time it doesn't have. No, but it should be classified as a file. So yeah, I'm not really sure why the license is being put here, but I think the rest is probably working. No, it's license. No, it's still not working. So what's going on here? I don't know. I think I'm gonna stop here. I'm already tired. I'm gonna solve the rest of this off stream. Maybe I'll come back today, but most likely not, because I also wanna, like, once I finish this stuff, I wanna take a break now to go eat something. So, but I wanna convert everything to Solid.js to see if I can do it like as fast as possible. But first I need to figure this out. Then once I figure this one out, I think I'm very close, but I just need to take a break, and then when I come back, I'm probably gonna be able to, because I think the algorithm is correct. It's just this detail of the file, because the structure seems to be correct. And obviously I have to spend more time thinking to see if. I think the thing that is happening now is that it is not appending any file. And yeah. So it's probably the condition here that I'm messing it up. Just have to spend some time thinking about it. Then once I finish this, I think I'm gonna try. It's not worth studying React Query. It's better to just see if it's gonna be relatively easy to transform the project that I have into Solid.js. If it is, then I think I'm gonna move to Solid.js because it seems to be better across the board than React. The only concern that I have is in the future, because React has a bunch of different libraries and like a bigger community, so there's a probability that it's going to be harder in the future because I might rely on different libraries that I'm not aware now. But I think for the most part, I already have everything that I need. Like, I can't think about other stuff. The main ones are React Query, React Fiber, and Zustan. I think those are the three ones that I need. And also a version of React DOM, or a way to do React DOM that is not too hard, that is going to make me spend a bunch of time. Because the main question I have is just time. Because obviously the more time I spend converting to Solid.js, the less time I have to develop the stuff, the actual website. And obviously I don't want to fall into the trap of always chasing the next thing, because obviously there will be other frameworks, if there isn't already, that are better than Solid.js. I used Svelte and I didn't like very much the way that it is. And I never used Vue.js, but Vue.js is completely different, so I would have to put too much work. The only reason why I'm thinking about Solid.js is because it's pretty much the same as React, but much better across the board. So if I can move to Solid, then I think I'm just going to stick with Solid. But before I do that, I think I have to finish this stuff here. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do off stream. And if I don't come back today, I'm probably going to come back soon, like tomorrow or 2 days from now. And maybe I'll do the process of converting everything to Solid on stream. And what I'm gonna do is just create, I have the other annoying thing is gonna be the Git, because I already did some like duct tape thing to move one project, because I was using another project and I moved to this one, and then the Git version is kind of off. So if I do move to Solid, that's another annoying thing, because I'm gonna have to figure out on the deployment how to change everything and how to change the Git as well. So but I might do this on stream. Yeah. Then after converting everything to Solid, I'm gonna go back to trying to figure out I'm gonna study React Query, and then I have to implement the caching. And after I implement the caching for the folder structure, I think I'm going to start thinking about how to create the graph. First, I'm gonna do the simple graph. The other thing that I'm gonna have to put more steps here, because now I realize that it's better to use the database as the graphs, for the graphs, instead of creating the graph on the fly. So the other thing I'm gonna have to figure out is, I'm gonna have to think about which graph database I'm gonna have to use. I'm gonna use either I use a document object model, like a document object database, not really sure how to say that, like store the information as JSON files, for example. Or I'm gonna search for one. I search for vector databases, but I'm not really sure if it makes a lot of sense, because it's more for clustering. But maybe it makes sense to use embeddings and LangChain and stuff like that for the database. But I'm gonna have to select which kind of database I'm gonna use for the graphs, and I'm gonna have to see what is the best way to integrate the database with Django. And then I'm gonna get the graphs from the database, and I'm gonna build the functions for getting the graphs in another API route. Then after I do that, then I build the other call on the front end to get the graph. And then once I get the graph, I have to structure the logic. But pretty much everything is going to change, because if I go to Solid, because I'm going to change all the stores to use the Solid context instead of the Zustan store. And that might be very hard. So yeah, but maybe 2 days from now, 1 day from now, I'll come back. And I'm gonna continue to work on this off stream, so see you next time.